"Madame, are you sure you want me to come close to you? I'm scared of your husband. What if he catches us?" Emeka asked. "Tell me you don't want taste me right now. Come here and eat me tonight, my husband is not around." Emeka jumped to the bed and made Nneka screamed throughout the night. Obina Nnamdi had everything a man could dream of: wealth, power, and influence. As the CEO of Lawson Enterprises, he controlled multi-million-dollar deals and led boardroom battles that shaped industries. However, in the pursuit of success, he neglected the one thing that mattered most: his home. His wife, Nneka, had once been the love of his life. She had stood by him through the struggles, the long nights, the early failures, and the ultimate rise to fortune. But as his bank account grew, his attention to his wife diminished. He was always working. If he wasn't in the office, he was on a business trip. If he was home, he was locked in his study on endless calls. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. He hardly touched Nneka anymore. When she tried to complain, he waved her off with expensive gifts, designer bags, diamond jewelry, luxury vacations she had to take alone. But Nneka didn't want money. She wanted love, attention, passion. And then there was Emeka. Emeka wasn't just any gateman. He was a man who drew attention wherever he went, effortlessly stealing glances and whispered conversations from the house staff and visitors alike. Standing at 6'2" with smooth dark skin that glistened under the harsh sunlight, Emeka had a physique that looked sculpted from years of hard, physical labor. His muscles rippled beneath his uniform, and his broad shoulders seemed perfectly crafted to carry both strength and dignity. But it wasn't just his striking appearance that made him stand out. It was his quiet confidence. Unlike the rest of the mansion staff, Emeka walked with an aura that suggested he knew his worth. He never bowed excessively, never stammered nervously around Obina or Nneka, and never avoided eye contact out of fear. Instead, he held his head high, his deep, dark eyes always observing, always thoughtful. And perhaps most captivating was Emeka's smile. When he smiled, it was slow, genuine, and full of secrets, a kind of smile that hinted at hidden depths and unspoken thoughts. It was the kind of smile that made Nneka's heart skip a beat, even when she told herself it shouldn't. When Emeka first arrived at the mansion, Nneka hardly noticed him. She barely paid attention to any of the staff, consumed as she was by loneliness. But something about Emeka was different. From his first day, he subtly showed that he wasn't just there to open gates. He genuinely cared about the people around him. He greeted Nneka with a soft "good morning, madam" each day, his voice smooth and warm. Unlike the other staff, Emeka didn't shrink away when he saw her approaching. Instead, he always seemed ready with a compliment, delivered respectfully yet in a way that lingered long after their brief exchanges ended. "Madam, your hair looks lovely today," he'd say softly, glancing away respectfully. But not before Nneka saw the admiration in his eyes. At first, she brushed it off, embarrassed by the flutter in her stomach. She told herself she was imagining things, that Emeka was just doing his job, trying to be polite. But the compliments kept coming, each one slightly more intimate than the last, as if testing the boundaries gently. Then came the day Nneka found herself crying silently in the garden. She hadn't realized Emeka had been watching her from afar. Quietly, without disturbing her privacy, he approached with genuine concern in his eyes. "Madam, is everything okay?" Nneka was startled. She quickly wiped her tears, embarrassed. "I'm fine, Emeka. Thank you." But Emeka didn't leave. Instead, he hesitated, a gentle look in his eyes. "If I may, madam, sometimes talking helps. You don't have to feel alone." His words struck something deep within her. For years she had been isolated, drowning in luxury but starving for simple human connection. Yet here was Emeka, this handsome, gentle stranger offering comfort she hadn't received in ages. "You're very kind," Emeka whispered softly, her voice barely audible. Emeka smiled warmly, stepping closer but still maintaining a respectful distance. "Kindness is the least you deserve, madame. If I may say, someone as beautiful as you should never feel this sadness." Emeka's heart skipped a beat. His words weren't merely polite, they were genuine. She felt herself drawn to his warmth, his presence, and his authenticity. In that moment, she saw something in his eyes, something that promised more than just comfort, something deeper, desire. And as the days passed, Emeka found herself noticing Emeka more and more. She watched him discreetly from her bedroom window, observing how he moved gracefully around the compound, strong yet gentle. His presence became something she secretly looked forward to, a small glimmer of excitement in her otherwise lonely days. She started dressing differently, more carefully, elegantly, hoping Emeka would notice. And he did. Each day his compliments became more personal, his gazes more lingering, until one day he said softly, "Madam, I hope this is not out of place, but when you smile, it brightens my entire day." That was the moment Emeka knew she had crossed a line. She felt guilty, but also alive, more alive than she had felt in years. Emeka was no longer just the handsome Gateman. He had become something more dangerous, more intoxicating, a temptation she could no longer resist. Emeka stood by the window of her bedroom, staring down at the compound, watching Emeka as he moved about his duties. It had been weeks now, weeks of stolen glances, unspoken words, and dangerously lingering touches. Emeka had become more than just the handsome Gateman, he had become her escape. And now, she couldn't fight it anymore. She had tried to resist. She had reminded herself that she was a married woman, that what she was feeling was wrong. But how could something so wrong feel so good? Obina was gone again. As always. Another business trip. Another night she would spend alone in the cold bed of their oversized mansion. Another day where she would feel like a ghost in her own home. But tonight would be different. Tonight she would let herself feel something. Her heart pounded as she walked out of her room and made her way downstairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if her conscience was begging her to turn around. But her body had already decided. She reached the main door and opened it softly. The night air was warm, wrapping around her like an invisible embrace. Across the compound, Emeka stood by the gate, his strong frame illuminated by the dim glow of the security lights. Emeka hesitated for a moment before calling out, "Emeka." He turned immediately, surprised. He had never heard her call his name like that before. "Madam?" he responded, his deep voice cautious, respectful. She stepped forward, her silk nightgown flowing around her legs as she approached him. The soft fabric clung to her body in the night breeze, outlining her figure in a way that made Emeka swallow hard. "I need to talk to you," she said, barely above a whisper. Emeka hesitated before nodding. "Of course, madame." But Emeka didn't stop walking. She passed him, heading toward the small guest house at the far end of the property, the one rarely used, the one where no one would see them. Emeka followed, his breath unsteady, his mind racing. He knew what this was. He had seen it in her eyes for weeks now. The desire, the longing, the need. They reached the guest house, and Emeka opened the door, stepping inside. She turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Close the door," she whispered. Emeka obeyed, his hands trembling slightly as he turned the lock. Silence. A thick, suffocating silence stretched between them. Emeka took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she reached up and touched the fabric of his shirt. Slowly, she ran her fingers across his chest, feeling the heat of his skin beneath. Emeka shuddered at her touch. "Madam, are you sure?" he asked, his voice hoarse, filled with hesitation. Nneka looked up at him, her eyes dark with emotion. For once in my life, I don't want to think. I just want to feel. That was all it took. Emeka cupped her face in his large, calloused hands, his touch rough yet gentle. He hesitated for only a second before leaning in, pressing his lips against hers. Nneka melted into him, her hands gripping his arms as if anchoring herself to the moment. It was raw, intense, unlike anything she had felt in years. Their bodies pressed together, heat rising between them like a wild fidre. Join me next time for part 2 of this captivating story. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Before you go, help me grow this community. Hit that like button for more thrilling content, subscribe for new uploads, comment below with your theories and reactions. Share with friends and family who love a good story. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for being an amazing part of this journey.